In a city filled with secrets and shadows, Ryan, a kind-hearted waiter, crosses paths with Bella, a mysterious young girl with a haunting voice and a past shrouded in danger. What begins as an act of kindness quickly spirals into a gripping battle for survival when Bella's estranged father, a man with a dark agenda, comes searching for her. As Ryan and Bella uncover hidden truths and face relentless threats, they're forced to confront the question, how far would you go to protect someone who needs you? Stick around to uncover this thrilling story of courage, resilience, and the power of chosen family. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And before we dive any deeper, we're curious, where in the world are you watching from right now? Let us know. The clock ticked past 10 p.m. at Blue Haven Diner. Ryan, a young waiter, wiped down a table with aching hands. Outside, the city hummed with distant cars and hurried footsteps. A cold breeze pushed the glass door slightly open, and standing there was a girl. Her small frame, tangled hair, and bare feet made her look like a shadow against the neon lights. Ryan noticed her hesitation. "Hey," he called softly. "Are you hungry?" The girl froze, but nodded faintly. He opened the door, letting the warm aroma of burgers and fries spill out. "Come inside. But there's a catch, you have to sing for your supper." She glanced at the few customers left, an elderly couple sharing pie, a group of college friends laughing in the corner. Nervously, she nodded and shuffled in. Minutes later, Bella stood in a corner of the diner, her hands trembling. When she began to sing, her voice was a whisper, but it grew, filling the room with a haunting melody. Conversation stopped. Even the cook peeked out from the kitchen. Her voice seemed to carry stories of pain and resilience, holding everyone captive. When Bella finished, the room erupted in applause. Ryan brought her a plate piled high with food. "That was amazing," he said. "What's your name?" "Bella," she whispered. As she ate, Ryan asked questions. She answered vaguely, no parents, nowhere to go, just wandering. But Ryan sensed more to her story. The moment shattered when the door slammed open. Tom, the diner's strict owner, stormed in. His eyes locked on Bella. "Ryan, what is this?" "She was hungry, sir," Ryan began. "She sang for the customers. They loved it." Tom's face twisted. "This isn't a charity. Get her out. Now." The room fell silent. Bella froze, clutching her fork. Ryan took a deep breath. "If she goes, I go." Tom's eyebrows shot up. "You're quitting? For her?" Ryan nodded, his voice steady. "Yes." Tom scoffed, waving him off. "Fine. Leave. Both of you." As Ryan grabbed his coat, Bella followed him out into the chilly night. They walked in silence, her tiny footsteps echoing beside his. Finally, he asked, "Do you have anywhere to go?" She shook her head. "Then stay with me tonight," Ryan offered. The night stretched ahead of them as they walked. Ryan wondered what had driven him to risk everything for a stranger. But something about Bella, a fragile girl with a voice that could silence a room, made him feel this wasn't a random act of kindness. "Who are you, Bella?" he murmured under his breath as they turned the corner, shadows trailing behind. Ryan's small apartment was cramped but warm, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. Bella stood in the doorway, hesitant, clutching the frayed edges of her oversized coat. Ryan gestured her inside. "It's not much," he said, turning on a dim lamp. "But it's safe." Bella nodded, stepping carefully onto the worn carpet. Her eyes darted around, scanning the room as if searching for something or someone. She finally sank onto the old couch, her frame small against its oversized cushions. "Hungry again?" Ryan asked. He pulled out a loaf of bread and some peanut butter from a cluttered cabinet. Bella shook her head, but didn't speak. Her silence was palpable, heavy with unspoken words. Ryan sat across from her, his curiosity growing. "So, Bella, where are you from?" She avoided his gaze. "Nowhere." "That's not a place," Ryan said gently, hoping humor might coax her to open up. Her lips twitched into the faintest smile, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. "I don't like to talk about it," she said. Ryan studied her for a moment. Her guarded demeanor reminded him of someone his sister, Emily. The memory stung, but he pushed it aside. "Fair enough," Ryan said. "But if you ever want to talk, I'm here." The room fell into silence, save for the faint hum of the radiator. Ryan leaned back, closing his eyes. He was exhausted, the day's events weighing heavily on him. But just as he began to drift off, a soft voice broke the quiet. "My mom used to sing," Bella said suddenly, her eyes fixed on a small crack in the ceiling. Ryan opened his eyes, startled. "She did?" Bella nodded. "She said songs could make people feel safe, even when the world wasn't." Ryan didn't press her further, sensing this was all she could share for now. But her words lingered in his mind. Later that night, as Bella slept curled up on the couch, Ryan stared at the ceiling. Something about her story didn't sit right. Who was this girl with a voice that could stop a room? And what had driven her to the streets? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Frowning, Ryan glanced at the clock. It was past midnight. Cautiously, he opened the door to find Mariana, his neighbor and longtime friend. Her nurse's scrubs were wrinkled from a long shift, and her face was a mix of concern and curiosity. "I heard what happened at the diner," she said. "You okay?" Ryan nodded. "It's complicated." He stepped aside, letting her in. Mariana's eyes landed on Bella, who stirred but didn't wake. "Who's the kid?" "Her name's Bella. She was hungry, and Tom wanted to throw her out," Ryan explained. Mariana's brow furrowed. "Ryan, you're kind, but you just quit your job. How are you going to take care of her?" "I don't know," Ryan admitted. "But I couldn't leave her out there. She has no one." Mariana sighed, her expression softening. "You always had a big heart. Look, let me help. There's a restaurant I know, a friend of mine owns it. They're hiring. I'll call him tomorrow." "Thank you," Ryan said, relief washing over him. Mariana glanced at Bella again. "But be careful. Kids like her, they don't end up on the streets without a reason. And not all those reasons are safe." Her words stayed with Ryan long after she left. As he looked at Bella's sleeping form, he couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was lurking in the shadows of her past. The sun barely peeked over the horizon when Ryan woke to the sound of soft footsteps. Rubbing his eyes, he saw Bella by the window, staring at the street below. She looked lost in thought, her small frame silhouetted against the pale light. "You're up early," Ryan said, stretching as he walked over. Bella flinched, but relaxed when she realized it was him. "I couldn't sleep," she murmured. Ryan knelt beside her, trying to meet her gaze. "Bad dreams?" Bella hesitated before nodding. "It's always the same. Someone chasing me. I never see their face, but I feel them." Ryan's stomach tightened. Mariana's warning from the night before echoed in his mind. Kids like her don't end up on the streets without a reason. Before he could respond, there was a knock at the door. Ryan opened it to find Mariana holding 2 cups of coffee. "Morning," she said, handing one to Ryan. She glanced at Bella, who had retreated to the couch. "Ready for that job lead?" Ryan nodded. "More than ready. Let me grab my coat." Bella looked up, her eyes wide. "You're leaving?" "Just for a bit," Ryan assured her. "I'm checking out a new job. Mariana will stay with you." Bella didn't respond, but Ryan noticed her grip tighten on the edge of the couch. He gave her a reassuring smile before heading out with Mariana. The restaurant Mariana mentioned was small but lively, nestled in a bustling neighborhood. Ernesto, the owner, was a kind-faced man in his late 50s, with a thick mustache and warm eyes. "Mariana's told me good things about you," Ernesto said, shaking Ryan's hand. "You have experience in customer service?" "Years," Ryan replied. "Well, I could use the help. Business is picking up, and I need someone who can handle the rush." "What do you say?" Ernesto asked. Ryan smiled, feeling a wave of relief. I'd be honored. Ernesto gestured for Ryan to follow. There's a small room upstairs. It's not much, but if you and the girl need a place to stay, it's yours. Ryan stopped in his tracks, surprised. You know about Bella? Mariana, standing nearby, chimed in. I might have mentioned her. He's offering to help Ryan. Ernesto shrugged. The world's hard enough as it is. If I can make it a bit easier, why not? When Ryan returned to the apartment later, Bella was waiting at the door. How did it go? She asked nervously. Ryan knelt to her level, his face lighting up. We've got a job and a place to stay. Things are looking up. Bella's face softened, but the relief was short-lived. That night, as they packed their belongings, Ryan noticed a shadow outside the window. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but then it moved, a figure lurking in the alley. Bella, Ryan whispered, pulling her away from the window. Stay here. He crept outside, but the alley was empty except for a faint echo of retreating footsteps. Returning inside, Ryan locked the door and sat down, his heart pounding. Was someone there? Bella asked, her voice trembling. Ryan hesitated, then shook his head. It's nothing, just my imagination. But deep down he knew that wasn't true. Someone was watching them, and whoever it was, they weren't going to stop. The unease from the night before lingered as Ryan and Bella arrived at Ernesto's restaurant the next morning. The small room upstairs was modest but cozy, with a single bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the street below. Bella sat on the bed, quietly tracing circles on the blanket while Ryan unpacked. This will be home for now, Ryan said, forcing a smile. What do you think? It's nice, Bella replied softly, but her eyes darted to the window, scanning the street. Ryan noticed her nervousness and crouched beside her. We're safe here. Ernesto's a good guy. He won't let anything happen to us. Bella nodded, but her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. Ryan's reassurance felt hollow. Downstairs, the restaurant buzzed with activity. Customers filled the tables, and Ernesto barked orders from behind the counter. Ryan dove into work, taking orders and delivering plates with a practiced ease that impressed Ernesto. Good job, kid, Ernesto said during a brief lull. You'll fit right in here. Ryan grinned, grateful for the chance to rebuild. But his mind kept drifting to the figure in the alley. Who were they? Why were they watching? His thoughts were interrupted when Bella appeared at the kitchen door. She hesitated, her small frame almost invisible behind the bustling staff. Bella? Everything okay? Ryan asked, approaching her. There's someone outside, she whispered, her voice trembling. Ryan's heart sank. What do you mean? She pointed toward the window. Ryan followed her to the front of the restaurant, where the street outside bustled with lunchtime crowds. Among them, a man stood motionless near the corner, his coat dark and face partially obscured by a hat. He seemed to be staring directly at them. Ryan's fists clenched. Stay here, he said firmly to Bella. As he stepped outside, the cold air stung his face. He walked briskly toward the man, his chest tightening with each step. Can I help you? Ryan called out. The man turned, his face shadowed, but Ryan caught a glimpse of a thin scar running down his cheek. Bella doesn't belong to you, the man said, his voice low and gravelly. Ryan froze. What are you talking about? The man smirked but didn't answer. Instead, he turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Ryan standing in the middle of the sidewalk, his heart pounding. Back inside, Bella was waiting anxiously. Who was it? She asked. Ryan hesitated. Just someone lost. It's nothing to worry about. Bella's eyes narrowed. You're lying. Ryan sighed and sat beside her. I don't know who he is, but he knew your name. Bella, is there something you're not telling me? Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know who he is. I swear. But there was a man who used to follow my mom and me before she disappeared. He had a scar on his face. Ryan's blood ran cold. The same man? Bella nodded, her voice barely audible. I think so. That night, as the restaurant quieted and Bella lay asleep upstairs, Ryan stayed awake, staring out the window. His mind raced with questions. Who was the man? And what did he want with Bella? Downstairs, Ernesto appeared, holding a cup of coffee. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, sitting across from Ryan. Ryan debated whether to tell Ernesto, but decided he needed help. There's a man watching us. Bella thinks he's connected to her mom's disappearance. Ernesto's face darkened. I've seen men like that. They don't just watch, they act. If you're in trouble, you need to be ready. Ryan swallowed hard. What do you mean? Protect her no matter what, Ernesto said firmly. But you also need to find out the truth. It's the only way to stop him. As the clock struck midnight, Ryan stared out into the dark street below, determined. Whoever the man was, he wouldn't let him get to Bella. The following morning, Ryan felt the weight of Ernesto's words. He couldn't ignore the man with the scar or Bella's fear any longer. As Bella slept upstairs, he stood in the kitchen with Ernesto, formulating a plan. We need answers, Ernesto said, pouring a cup of coffee. If this guy's connected to Bella's mom, there's more to her story than we know. Ryan nodded, his jaw tight. But how do we find out? Bella doesn't remember much, and that man isn't exactly chatty. Ernesto leaned on the counter, deep in thought. You said he mentioned Bella doesn't belong to you. That means he knows her past. We start there. Ryan hesitated. You think he's part of why her mom disappeared? Could be, Ernesto said gravely. Or he knows what happened. Later that day, Bella sat at a corner table, scribbling on a notepad Ernesto had given her to keep her occupied. She looked peaceful, but Ryan knew it was a fragile facade. Bella, Ryan began, sitting across from her. I need to ask you something. Her pencil stopped moving. What is it? That man, the one with the scar. You said he used to follow your mom. Did she ever? Say why. Bella shook her head, her eyes downcast. She told me not to talk to him, to stay close to her. But sometimes he'd show up at our apartment or outside my school. She got scared, and then one day she was gone. Ryan's chest tightened. Do you remember anything else? Did she ever talk about someone who might have wanted to hurt her? Bella thought for a moment, then hesitated. There was a box. She kept it hidden under her bed. She said it had important papers, but I never saw what was inside. Ryan's mind raced. Do you think it's still there? At your old apartment? I don't know, Bella said softly. I haven't been back since she disappeared. That night, Ryan and Bella made their way to her old neighborhood. The building was run down, its windows cracked, and graffiti covered the walls. Bella clung to Ryan's side, her small hand gripping his tightly. Are you sure about this? She asked, her voice trembling. Ryan nodded. If there's a chance we can find something that explains what's happening, it's worth it. They climbed the creaking stairs to the third floor, the air heavy with mildew. Bella led Ryan to a door marked 3B. She hesitated before pushing it open. The apartment was a shell of its former self, abandoned and trashed. Furniture lay overturned, and the air was stale. Bella's face fell as she looked around. It wasn't like this before, she whispered. Ryan guided her to the bedroom. Let's check under the bed. Bella crouched down and reached into the dusty space. After a moment, her hand emerged clutching a small wooden box, its surface scratched and worn. Ryan carefully opened it. Inside were papers, photographs, and a small key. Among the items was a photograph of Bella's mom with a man Ryan didn't recognize, but his heart stopped when he saw the scar on the man's face. It's him, Bella whispered, her voice barely audible. Ryan flipped through the papers, finding a name, Richard Crane. Next to it was an address scribbled in shaky handwriting. This might be where he's hiding, Ryan said, his voice tense. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the hallway. Heavy footsteps approached. Ryan's eyes darted to Bella. Hide, he whispered, pulling her into a closet. The door creaked open, and a shadow filled the room. A familiar voice called out, low and menacing, "Bella, you've been hiding too long." Ryan's heart pounded as he held Bella close, both of them barely breathing. Whoever this man was, he wasn't going to leave without a fight. Ryan held Bella tightly as the voice of the scarred man echoed through the apartment. The heavy footsteps moved closer, and Ryan could feel Bella trembling in his arms. "Come out, Bella," the man said, his tone dripping with mockery. "You can't hide forever." Ryan's mind raced. He had to protect Bella, but how? The closet door was flimsy, and they were trapped. Suddenly, he spotted a window on the opposite wall, its glass slightly ajar. He leaned down and whispered, "When I say go, climb out the window and head to the stairs. Don't stop for anything. Do you understand?" Bella nodded, her eyes wide with fear. The footsteps stopped just outside the closet. The doorknob began to turn. Ryan braced himself, then shoved the door open with all his strength, slamming it into the man. "Run!" Ryan shouted. Bella darted for the window, her small frame slipping through with surprising speed. The man recovered quickly, grabbing Ryan by the collar and slamming him against the wall. "You shouldn't have gotten involved," the man growled, his scar twisting as he sneered. Ryan gritted his teeth and elbowed the man in the stomach, breaking free. He grabbed a chair and swung it, forcing the man to stumble back. Without wasting a second, Ryan climbed through the window and onto the fire escape. Bella was already halfway down the metal stairs, her breaths coming in quick gasps. "Keep going," Ryan called, descending after her. Below, the alley stretched dark and empty, but Ryan could hear the man cursing and following close behind. They hit the ground and sprinted toward the street, the sound of boots on metal echoing above them. Reaching the main road, Ryan spotted a cab idling at a red light. He grabbed Bella's hand and ran toward it, throwing the door open. "Drive! Now!" Ryan shouted to the startled driver, shoving a handful of crumpled bills at him. The driver hesitated but saw the urgency in Ryan's eyes and hit the gas. As the cab sped away, Ryan glanced out the back window. The scarred man stood on the curb, his face twisted in fury. "That's not the last we'll see of him," Ryan muttered, his chest heaving. Bella clung to his arm, her voice shaking. "Who is he? Why is he after me?" Ryan looked at her, his own fear mirrored in her wide eyes. "We're going to find out," he said, holding up the papers from the box. "But first, we need to get somewhere safe." The cab pulled up outside Ernesto's restaurant. Ryan and Bella rushed inside, locking the door behind them. Ernesto looked up from the counter, startled by their disheveled appearance. "What happened?" Ernesto asked, his face clouding with concern. "We found something," Ryan said, holding up the box. "But he found us." "Who?" "The man with the scar," Ryan replied, his voice low. "He knows where we are. He's not going to stop until he gets to Bella." Ernesto's expression darkened. "Then we need to stop him first." Ryan spread the papers out on a table, pointing to the address scrawled on one of them. "This might be his hideout." Ernesto leaned over the table, studying the address. "That's not far from here. But if you're going there, you can't do it alone." Ryan hesitated. "I can't put anyone else in danger." "You won't have a choice if he comes here looking for her," Ernesto said firmly. "We need to end this before it gets worse." Bella watched silently, her small hands clenched into fists. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling but determined. "I want to come with you." Ryan shook his head. "No, it's too dangerous." "But he's after me," Bella argued. "If I don't face him, he'll never stop." Ryan looked at her, torn between his instinct to protect her and her growing resolve. Ernesto placed a reassuring hand on Ryan's shoulder. "She's stronger than you think," Ernesto said. "But we'll do this together." Ryan nodded, though his stomach churned with worry. "Okay, tomorrow we end this." As the night deepened, the three of them prepared for the confrontation ahead. Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that the answers they were about to uncover would change everything. The following morning, Ryan, Ernesto, and Bella stood outside the crumbling warehouse at the address they had found in the box. The building loomed over them, its windows shattered and walls covered in peeling paint and graffiti. It seemed abandoned, but Ryan felt an ominous energy radiating from it. "Stay close," Ryan said, glancing at Bella. Her face was pale, but her eyes held a determined glint. Ernesto adjusted his coat, his expression unreadable. "Let's make this quick. The longer we're here, the more dangerous it gets." They stepped inside, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath their feet. Dust swirled in the air, and the dim light filtering through the broken windows cast eerie shadows on the walls. The faint hum of machinery somewhere deep within the building was the only sound. "Where do we start?" Ernesto asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ryan pulled out the photograph of Bella's mom and the scarred man. "We look for anything that connects this place to him or her." They began searching the main floor, their footsteps cautious. Papers, broken furniture, and empty crates littered the space, but nothing seemed to offer any clues. Then Bella froze, her gaze fixed on a doorway partially obscured by a tarp. "I hear something," she whispered. Ryan strained his ears. Faint voices echoed from behind the tarp. Motioning for silence, he crept forward and pushed it aside, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into the dark. "This is a bad idea," Ernesto muttered, but he followed as Ryan led the way, Bella close behind. The basement was colder and smelled of damp concrete. Dim, flickering lights revealed rows of shelves lined with strange items, folders, old photographs, and boxes labeled with cryptic codes. "This isn't just a hideout," Ernesto murmured. "It's an archive." Ryan grabbed a folder and flipped it open. Inside were photos of various people, including Bella's mom. Notes scrawled in shorthand filled the margins, but one word stood out: Target. "What is this?" Bella asked, her voice shaking. Ryan scanned the page. "It looks like some kind of surveillance. They were tracking her." "Why?" Bella pressed, tears brimming in her eyes. Before Ryan could answer, heavy footsteps echoed down the stairs. "They're here," Ernesto hissed, grabbing a nearby metal pipe. Ryan and Bella ducked behind a shelf as two men entered the room, one of them the scarred man. His eyes scanned the basement, his lips curling into a sneer. "I know you're here, Bella," he called, his voice chilling. "There's no point in hiding. You can't run from the truth." Ryan's grip tightened around a heavy wrench he had picked up. Ernesto gave him a nod, signaling they would strike if necessary. But Bella stepped out from behind the shelf, her small frame defiant. "Why are you after me?" she demanded, her voice trembling but strong. The scarred man's smile widened. "Because you're the key. Your mother took something that doesn't belong to her, and now you're going to help me get it back." Ryan stepped out, positioning himself between Bella and the man. "You're not laying a hand on her." The man chuckled darkly. Brave words for someone out of his depth. Ernesto moved quickly, swinging the pipe at the second man, who crumpled with a grunt. The scarred man lunged for Bella, but Ryan tackled him, both of them crashing into a shelf. "Run, Bella!" Ryan shouted, grappling with the man. Bella hesitated, her eyes darting to the papers on the floor. She grabbed a handful and bolted up the stairs. Ernesto followed, dragging Ryan to his feet as the scarred man recovered. "This isn't over," the man roared, chasing after them. They burst out of the warehouse into the daylight, Bella clutching the papers tightly. Ernesto flagged down a passing truck, and the driver, sensing the urgency, agreed to take them. As the truck sped away, Bella unfolded the papers. Her hands shook as she read. "Ryan, these papers," she said, her voice barely audible. "They say my mom was hiding me from him." Ryan's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" Bella looked up, her face pale. "The scarred man, he's my father." The truck rattled down the highway, But inside, the air was heavy with shock. Bella's revelation hung in the silence, her hands clutching the crumpled papers. "Bella," Ryan said carefully, breaking the quiet, "what do you mean he's your father?" Her eyes welled with tears as she stared at the documents. "It's all here. My mom, she was running from him. He wanted me for something, but she didn't trust him." She pointed to a line on one of the pages. She wrote it here. "Richard Crane must never find Bella. She's the only thing standing between him and the leverage he wants." "Leverage?" Ernesto asked from the front seat. Ryan frowned. "Leverage for what?" Bella shook her head. "I don't know. But my mom knew he was dangerous. That's why she disappeared. She wasn't abandoning me, she was trying to protect me." The truck pulled off the highway into a quiet parking lot. The driver glanced back. "This is as far as I go," he said, nodding toward a small diner. "Thank you," Ryan said, helping Bella and Ernesto out. Inside the diner, they settled into a booth in the corner. Bella clutched her papers while Ernesto ordered coffee. "For everyone. We need to figure out what he's after," Ryan said, leaning forward. "These documents mention leverage. Could it be money? Power?" Ernesto shook his head. "It's bigger than that. A man like him doesn't hunt someone for years over petty gains." Bella's voice broke in, trembling. "I think it's me. He wanted me for some reason." Ryan and Ernesto exchanged uneasy glances. "Let's go through the papers again," Ryan said. "There has to be something we missed." As they sifted through the documents, one sheet caught Ryan's attention. It was a photocopy of a birth certificate. The mother's name was familiar, Bella's mom, Eleanor. But the father's name sent a chill down Ryan's spine. Richard Crane. "It's official," Ryan said, showing Bella. "He's your biological father." Bella's hands trembled as she took the paper. "But why would my mom keep that a secret?" Ernesto, his brow furrowed, pointed to another document, a legal-looking paper with bold letters. "Custody agreement nullified." "Your mom fought to keep you away from him," Ernesto said. "This wasn't just about family drama. She must have known something dark about him." Their conversation was cut short when the bell above the diner door jingled. Ryan instinctively looked up and froze. Richard Crane had entered, his scarred face scanning the room. "Don't move," Ryan whispered, his voice sharp. Bella's breathing quickened. Ernesto, ever calm under pressure, shifted to block Bella from view. Crane's eyes locked on Ryan, and a slow smile spread across his face. He walked toward the booth, his steps deliberate. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Crane said, his voice low. "The runaway, the guardian, and the meddler. All together." Ryan stood, his fists clenched. "You're not taking her." Crane chuckled, his gaze flicking to Bella. "Oh, I think she'll come willingly once she knows the truth. Your mother lied to you, Bella. She made me out to be the villain, but I'm the only one who can protect you now." "That's not true," Bella shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. "You were stalking us. You scared her." Crane's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of anger. "She was hiding something. Something I need to protect. And you're the key, Bella. You always were." Ryan stepped closer. "You're not taking her anywhere." Crane smirked. "Brave words, but you don't understand what you're up against." Suddenly, two men entered the diner, clearly Crane's accomplices. Ernesto tensed, his hand subtly reaching for a butter knife on the table. Ryan glanced at Bella. "Run," he mouthed. "No," she whispered, clutching his arm. Crane took a step closer. "You can't run forever, Bella. The truth will catch up to you." Summoning her courage, Bella stood and faced him. "Maybe it's time you stop running from the truth. My mom wasn't hiding me from the world. She was hiding the world from you." Crane's smirk disappeared, replaced by a cold fury. "Enough of this." He motioned for his men to move. Ryan acted fast, flipping the table into Crane's path. "Go, Bella." Ernesto grabbed one of the accomplices, using the knife as a makeshift weapon. Ryan tackled the second man, struggling to keep him down. Bella hesitated for only a second before running toward the back exit, clutching the papers tightly. Crane's furious voice echoed behind her. "Bring her to me." Outside, Bella sprinted into the night, her heart pounding. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't let him win. Bella ran blindly into the cold night, her breath visible in the icy air. The papers clutched tightly in her hands felt heavier with every step, as if they carried not just answers, but a burden she couldn't yet understand. Behind her, the faint sounds of shouting and scuffling grew distant, but she knew they wouldn't stay that way for long. She darted into an alley, her small frame easily slipping between dumpsters and stacks of crates. Her heart thundered in her chest as her mind replayed Crane's words. "You're the key, Bella. You always were." What did he mean? What kind of key could she possibly be? Meanwhile, inside the diner chaos reigned. Ryan wrestled with one of Crane's henchmen, narrowly dodging a blow that sent plates and silverware clattering to the floor. Ernesto, surprisingly nimble for his age, swung a chair at the other man, buying Ryan enough time to land a punch that sent his opponent sprawling. Crane, however, remained eerily calm. He adjusted his coat, his sharp eyes watching the scuffle with disinterest. When Ryan turned to face him, Crane gave a cold smile. "You're playing a dangerous game, boy," Crane said, his tone icy. "You think you're protecting her, but you're just delaying the inevitable." Ryan squared his shoulders, his fists clenched. "She's not your pawn. Whatever you're after, it ends here." Crane stepped forward, his presence towering. "You're in over your head, and now you're in my way." But before Crane could make a move, Ernesto stepped between them, wielding a broken chair leg like a bat. "Not tonight, pal," Ernesto growled. "You want her? You'll have to go through both of us." Crane's smirk faded. "Fine. You've bought her a little time, but I'll find her." With a sharp motion, he gestured to his men. "We're leaving." The tension in the room eased as Crane exited, his henchmen stumbling after him. Ryan didn't relax until the door swung shut, the distant sound of Crane's car engine fading into the night. "We need to find her," Ryan said immediately, grabbing his coat. Ernesto nodded, his face grim. "And fast. He won't stop hunting her." Bella, unaware of the diner's resolution, found herself in an empty park. The swings swayed gently in the cold wind, the creak of the chains the only sound around her. She collapsed onto a bench, her small body shaking from fear and exhaustion. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the papers she had taken from the warehouse. Scanning the text, one phrase stood out. "Project Legacy." "Project Legacy?" she whispered aloud, her voice cracking. The papers outlined an experiment, one involving children with rare genetic markers. Her name appeared on a list, along with others, and at the bottom of the page, a bold note read, "Primary candidate, Bella Crane." Tears stung her eyes. This was why her mother had hidden her. This was why Crane had been chasing them. She wasn't just his daughter. She was a piece in some twisted plan. Ryan and Ernesto searched the streets frantically, calling Bella's name. Finally, Ryan spotted a small figure sitting on a bench beneath a flickering street lamp. "Bella!" he shouted, running toward her. She looked up, startled, and ran into his arms, the papers still clutched tightly in her hands. "I found out," she said, her voice trembling. "I know why he's after me." Ryan knelt down to her level. "Tell me." She handed him the papers, pointing to the words Project Legacy. Ernesto, catching up, leaned over Ryan's shoulder to read. His face darkened as he scanned the details. "This isn't just about you being his daughter," Ernesto said. "This is about control, power. If he gets you, he gets everything he's been chasing." Bella's voice broke. "What do we do?" Ryan's grip on the papers tightened. "We stop him, once and for all." Ernesto frowned. "Easier said than done. He has resources, connections. If we go after him, we need a plan." Ryan nodded. Then we'll make one. We won't let him win, Bella. I promise. But as he spoke, the sound of tires screeching broke the quiet. Headlights appeared at the edge of the park, cutting through the dark. They found us. Ernesto muttered, his voice low. Ryan stood, pulling Bella behind him as the car doors opened. Crane stepped out, his men close behind. This ends now, Crane called, his voice echoing across the park. Ryan glanced at Ernesto, then back at Bella. Stay behind me. No matter what happens. The final confrontation had begun. The park was eerily still, the cold wind carrying Crane's ominous voice across the dark expanse. Ryan tightened his grip on Bella's hand, keeping her behind him as Ernesto stepped forward, wielding a piece of broken pipe he'd picked up from the ground. Give it up, Crane, Ryan shouted. You're not taking her. Crane's scar twisted as he smirked. You still don't understand, do you? This isn't about taking her. It's about saving what's left of my legacy. Behind him, his two henchmen moved closer, their heavy boots crunching on the frosty grass. You call this saving? Ryan retorted, his voice sharp. You've hunted her, terrified her, all for some experiment you couldn't let go of. She's my daughter, Crane snapped, his calm demeanor cracking. She belongs with me. Bella stepped out from behind Ryan, her small figure defiant. I don't belong to anyone, she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. You're not my father. You're just a monster. Crane's eyes darkened, but before he could respond, Ernesto charged. Swinging the pipe with practiced precision, he knocked one of Crane's men to the ground. Ryan lunged at the other, catching him off guard and sending him sprawling. Run, Bella, Ryan shouted. Bella hesitated, but when Crane moved toward her, she turned and bolted toward the trees. Crane started to chase, but Ryan tackled him, the two crashing to the ground in a tangle of fists and fury. You don't get to ruin her life, Ryan growled, landing a punch. Crane threw him off with surprising strength, his scarred face twisted with rage. You have no idea what's at stake. Ryan scrambled to his feet. I don't care. She's not a tool for your plans. Nearby, Ernesto wrestled with the second henchman, delivering a swift kick that left the man groaning on the ground. Go help Bella, Ernesto shouted to Ryan. Ryan didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted into the trees, following Bella's faint cries for help. Bella ran through the woods, her small feet crunching on fallen leaves. The darkness closed in around her, but she didn't stop. She clutched the papers tightly, determined not to let Crane win. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm, yanking her to a halt. She screamed, but it was Ryan. Bella, it's me, he said, pulling her into a quick hug. Are you okay? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. He won't stop, Ryan. He'll never stop. Ryan crouched to her level, his eyes fierce. Yes, he will. But we have to end this now. The sound of snapping branches made them turn. Crane emerged from the shadows, his coat flaring as he stepped forward. You're persistent, I'll give you that, Crane said coldly. But this game is over. Hand her over, or what? Ernesto's voice cut through the tension as he appeared behind Crane, wielding the pipe again. Crane glanced back, his calm cracking. You're outnumbered. Ryan smirked. You sure about that? Behind them, the sound of sirens filled the air. Bright red and blue lights flashed through the trees as police cars pulled into the park. What did you do? Crane hissed. Called for backup, Ryan said. You think I'd face you without a plan? Crane lunged for Bella, but Ryan intercepted him, tackling him to the ground. The two struggled until officers swarmed the area, pulling Crane off Ryan and slapping cuffs on his wrists. Get off me! Crane snarled, but the officers didn't relent. One of the officers, a woman with a steady gaze, knelt beside Bella. Are you okay, sweetheart? Bella hesitated, then nodded. Ryan sat back on the ground, his chest heaving. Ernesto helped him to his feet, a tired but satisfied grin on his face. It's over, Ernesto said. Ryan looked at Bella, who still clutched the papers. Yeah, it's over. In the weeks that followed, Bella and Ryan worked with authorities to ensure Crane couldn't harm anyone again. The documents she had carried so desperately were used as evidence, revealing the extent of his dangerous experiments and illegal activities. But for Bella, the most important thing was finding peace. One evening, as they sat on a park bench under a clear, starlit sky, Bella turned to Ryan. You didn't have to do all this for me, she said quietly. Ryan smiled. Yes, I did. Because you're worth it, Bella. And you always will be. For the first time in what felt like forever, Bella let herself believe it. As the journey of Ryan and Bella ends, we're reminded that courage, compassion, and the willingness to fight for what's right can create lasting change. Bella's story teaches us that even in the darkest moments, hope and kindness can light the way. If you enjoyed this story and want more thrilling tales filled with emotion, twists, and unforgettable characters, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.